The stagecoach lurched violently as another gunshot cracked through the Arizona desert air, and Penelope Dawson pressed herself against the worn leather seat, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst right through her rib cage. She'd been traveling from Tucson to Superior, Arizona, carrying documents that would finalize her late father's mining claim, documents that apparently someone else wanted badly enough to kill for. The driver shouted something she could not make out over the thundering hooves and rattling wheels, but his tone conveyed pure fear. Through the small window, Penelope glimpsed 3 riders gaining on them, their faces obscured by bandanas, their intentions crystal clear. The stagecoach swayed dangerously as the driver pushed the horses harder, taking a curve too fast. Penelope gripped the edge of her seat, her knuckles white beneath her traveling gloves. She was 22 years old, had buried her father just 3 months prior, and was not about to let some desperate outlaws take what little she had left in this world. But bravery meant nothing without means, and she had neither weapon nor skill to use one. Another shot rang out, this one striking the stagecoach itself with a sharp crack of splintering wood. The driver cursed loudly, and suddenly the entire vehicle jerked to the right, leaving the main road entirely. Penelope was thrown sideways, her shoulders slamming into the wall as they careened onto what seemed to be little more than a rough trail cutting through scrubby brush and rocky terrain. "Where are we going?" she shouted, but the driver did not answer, too focused on keeping the horses from breaking their legs on the uneven ground. The landscape changed rapidly as they climbed higher into the foothills, leaving behind the flat desert floor. Towering saguaros gave way to juniper and pinyon pines, the air growing slightly cooler despite the June heat. The pursuing riders fell back momentarily, clearly surprised by the sudden change in direction, but Penelope knew they would not give up so easily. Just when she thought her bones might shake loose from the violent jostling, the stagecoach slowed. Through the window, she saw why. A man stood in the middle of the narrow trail, one massive hand raised, the other resting on the rifle slung across his broad back. He was enormous, easily over 6 feet tall, with shoulders that seemed to span half the trail width. His hair was dark brown and fell past his shoulders in thick waves, and even from this distance, Penelope could see the powerful muscles of his arms exposed by his rolled-up sleeves. The driver pulled the horses to a stop, breathing hard. "Zane! Thank God! We've got trouble coming up behind us." The mountain man called Zane moved with surprising speed for someone so large, approaching the stagecoach in 3 long strides. His eyes were the color of storm clouds, sharp and assessing as they swept over the vehicle, then landed on Penelope through the window. For a moment, their gazes locked, and she felt something shift in her chest, though whether it was fear or something else entirely, she could not say. "How many?" His voice was deep, rough as gravel, but steady. 3 riders, armed. "They have been chasing us since we left the main road near the Gonzales Ranch." Zane's jaw tightened, visible even through the dark stubble that covered the lower half of his face. "You cannot outrun them with the stagecoach, not on this terrain. The axle will break before you make it another mile." He moved to the door and pulled it open, his eyes finding Penelope again. "Madam, I need you to come with me. Now." "I do not even know you," Penelope said, though her voice trembled despite her attempt at firmness. "That is true enough, but you know those men behind you even less, and I can promise you do not want to make their acquaintance." He extended his hand, palm calloused and scarred. "Name is Zane Erikson. I have a cabin about 2 miles north, well hidden. I can keep you safe until those riders move on." The driver turned in his seat, his weathered face creased with worry and dust. "Miss Dawson, I have known Zane for 5 years. He's a good man, best tracker in these mountains. You will be safer with him than trying to outrun those bastards." Penelope looked between the 2 men, her mind racing. Everything in her upbringing told her not to go off alone with a strange man, especially one who looked like he could snap a man's neck with his bare hands. But the distant sound of hoofbeats growing closer made the decision for her. She grabbed her carpet bag, took Zane's offered hand, and stepped down from the stagecoach. His hand was warm and strong, engulfing hers completely. The moment her feet touched the ground, he released her and turned to the driver. "Take the stagecoach further up this trail, then double back on the far side of that ridge. Make enough noise that they follow you. I will cover our tracks." "What about the lady's belongings?" "I have what matters," Penelope said quickly, patting her bag where the precious documents rested wrapped in oilcloth. Zane nodded once, already moving. He grabbed a branch of juniper and began sweeping it across the ground where Penelope had stepped down, erasing her footprints with practiced efficiency. "Go," he told the driver, "and be careful." The stagecoach lurched forward, and Penelope watched it disappear around a bend with a strange sense of finality. Then Zane was at her side, his hand barely touching her elbow as he guided her off the trail and into the dense brush. "Stay close and step where I step. Those men are not skilled trackers, but we should not make it easy for them." They moved quickly through the rough terrain, Zane navigating with the confidence of someone who knew every rock and tree. Penelope struggled to keep up, her traveling dress catching on thorny bushes and her shoes slipping on loose stones. Behind them, she heard the thundering approach of horses, then shouts as the riders presumably found the empty trail and the stagecoach tracks leading away. Zane paused, his head tilted as he listened. His profile was strong, all sharp angles and hard planes, like he had been carved from the same granite that jutted from these mountains. After a moment, he seemed satisfied and continued moving, this time at a slightly slower pace that Penelope appreciated. "Why are they after you?" he asked quietly, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. "My father owned a silver mining claim near Superior. He passed away 3 months ago, and the claim transfers to me once I file the proper documents. I have them with me." She paused to catch her breath, pressing a hand to her side where a stitch had formed. "I suspect someone wants to stop that from happening." Zane glanced at her, something like respect flickering in those gray eyes. "Silver makes men crazy, makes them do things they would not otherwise consider." He held up a hand suddenly, stopping her mid-step. They both froze, listening. The sound of horses had changed direction. They were following the stagecoach, just as Zane had planned. Penelope felt some of the tension leave her shoulders, though her heart still raced from both exertion and fear. "Smart girl," Zane murmured, more to himself than to her, then continued walking. "What were you planning to do with the silver mine?" "Sell it," Penelope admitted. "I know nothing about mining, and I have no desire to learn. My father wanted me to have security, a chance at a better life. The mine is worth enough to give me that." "Where is home?" "Boston originally. My father brought me west when I was 15, after my mother died. He always dreamed of striking it rich, and somehow he actually did it." The memory brought both pain and warmth. Her father had been a dreamer, often impractical, but he had loved her fiercely. "I was living in Tucson, working as a school teacher while he worked the claim. He wrote to me in April saying he had found a rich vein, that everything was going to change. 2 weeks later, they told me he was dead." Zane's expression hardened. "How did he die?" "They said it was an accident in the mine, a collapse." But Penelope had never quite believed it, and saying it aloud now, after being chased by armed men, made her doubts solidify into something closer to certainty. "You think someone killed him?" It was not a question, but Zane answered anyway. "Silver makes men crazy," he repeated, "and accidents are convenient." They walked in silence for a while after that, climbing higher into the mountains. The landscape was beautiful in a harsh, unforgiving way, all red rock and scattered green, the sky an endless blue dome overhead. The June sun beat down mercilessly, and Penelope could feel sweat trickling down her back beneath her layers of clothing. Zane seemed unbothered by the heat, his pace never faltering, his breathing steady despite the climb. "How much further?" she finally asked, hating how breathless she sounded. "Just over this rise." He paused, then surprised her by taking her bag. "Let me carry that." "I can manage." "I know you can, but you will manage better without it, and we need to move faster now. We are getting close to my land, and I want to make sure we were not followed by anyone smarter than those 3. Penelope relinquished the bag, watching as he slung it over his shoulder, as though it weighed nothing. The movement made the muscles in his back flex beneath his shirt, and she quickly looked away, feeling heat in her cheeks that had nothing to do with the sun. They crested the rise, and Penelope saw the cabin nestled in a small valley below. It was larger than she had expected, built of solid logs with a stone chimney and a covered porch. A stream ran nearby, glinting in the sunlight, and there was a small corral where 2 horses grazed peacefully. It looked isolated but well maintained, the kind of place a man could disappear into and never be found. "It is not fancy, but it is safe," Zane said, starting down the slope. "No one comes up here without me knowing about it long before they arrive." The cabin's interior was dim and cool after the bright heat outside, and Penelope blinked as her eyes adjusted. The space was a single large room with a sleeping area in one corner, a cooking area with a substantial fireplace in another, and a rough-hewn table with 2 chairs in the center. Furs covered the plank floor, and various tools, traps, and weapons hung on the walls. It was Spartan but clean, everything in its place. "You can have the bed," Zane said, setting her bag down. "I will sleep outside and keep watch." "That is not necessary. I could not take your bed." He turned to look at her fully for the first time since they had arrived, and Penelope felt pinned by the intensity of his gaze. "Miss Dawson, 3 men just chased you through the desert trying to steal from you, and possibly worse. They might have killed your father. Until I know you are safe, I will be keeping watch, and you will be sleeping in the only bed. Are we clear?" His tone was not unkind, but it brooked no argument. Penelope found herself nodding before she could think better of it. "Yes, and please call me Penelope." Something softened in his expression, just slightly. "Penelope," he repeated, and the sound of her name in that rough voice did strange things to her pulse. "I need to see those documents you are carrying. If someone is willing to kill for them, I want to know what we are dealing with." She retrieved the oilcloth package from her bag and unwrapped it carefully, spreading the papers on the table. There were several documents, all official, detailing the location of the claim, the assay results showing the silver content, and most importantly, the transfer papers that would make Penelope the legal owner once filed with the territorial office in Superior. Zane studied them with surprising focus, his brow furrowed. "Your father was Samuel Dawson? You knew him?" "Not personally, but I knew of him. He filed his claim about 4 years ago, worked it himself mostly. He was careful, did not brag about his findings in town." Zane tapped one of the assay reports. "But this would be impossible to keep quiet. This is not just good silver, Penelope. This is rich, worth more than most men see in a lifetime. Which is why I need to file these papers and sell it before someone takes it from me. Filing them will not be the hard part. Staying alive long enough to do it will be." He straightened, rolling his shoulders back. "The territorial office is in Superior, about 15 miles from here as the crow flies. But those men will expect you to go there, will probably have friends watching for you." "Then what do I do? I cannot hide forever." "No, but you can be smart about when and how you show yourself." He moved to the fireplace and began building a fire, despite the heat. "First thing is to make sure those riders do not find this place. Second is to figure out who sent them. Third is to get you to Superior safely." "You make it sound simple." He glanced at her over his shoulder, and there might have been the ghost of a smile on his lips. "Nothing about this is simple, but I have dealt with worse." As the afternoon wore on, Penelope found herself watching Zane with growing curiosity. He moved with efficient purpose, checking his weapons, preparing food, all while keeping a portion of his attention on the surrounding landscape visible through the windows. He was clearly a man used to solitude, comfortable in his own skin and space. "How long have you lived up here?" she asked as he set a pot of coffee on the fire. 5 years, give or take. I came to Arizona after the war, was not ready to go back to civilization yet. Found these mountains and decided they were as good a place as any to figure things out." "The war between the states?" He nodded once, not elaborating. Many men did not like to talk about those years, and Penelope did not press. She had been young during the war, but she remembered the tension, the fear, the way her father had paced their Boston home, torn between his Union sympathies and his desire to keep his family safe. "Do you ever get lonely up here?" This time he did look at her, really looked at her, and Penelope felt something shift in the air between them. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but lonely is better than the alternative I left behind." Which was noise, crowds, expectations. He poured coffee into 2 tin cups, handing her one. "Here, I answer to no one but myself. I hunt what I need, trade furs and meat in town when I need supplies, and mostly people leave me alone. Yet here you are, helping me. You needed help. That is different." He sat down across from her, cradling his own cup. and maybe I was getting a little too comfortable with the quiet. They drank their coffee in companionable silence, and Penelope found herself relaxing despite the circumstances. There was something solid about Zane Erikson, something that made her feel safe in a way she had not felt since her father died. He was a stranger, but he had dropped everything to help her, had brought her to his private sanctuary without hesitation. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for everything. I know you did not have to help me." "Yes, I did." His gray eyes met hers steadily. "I'm not the kind of man who can watch someone in trouble and walk away. Tried to be that man once. Did not suit me." "I'm glad it did not." Something warm flickered in his expression, there and gone so quickly she almost missed it. Then he stood, moving to the window. "Sun will be setting soon. I'm going to do a sweep of the area, make sure we are clear. Stay inside, keep away from the windows." "Be careful," she said, the words coming automatically. He paused at the door, looking back at her. "Always am." Then he was gone, slipping out into the growing twilight with barely a sound. Penelope sat alone in the cabin, listening to the crackle of the fire and the distant sound of the stream. She should have been terrified, alone in the wilderness with a strange man while people hunted her. Instead, she felt an odd sense of peace, as though she had stumbled into exactly where she was supposed to be. When Zane returned an hour later, full darkness had fallen. "We are clear," he reported. "No tracks, no signs of anyone within miles. The stagecoach made it safely away, too. I could see its lights on the main road heading toward Superior." "That's a relief." "Get some rest," he said, already gathering blankets from a chest. "Tomorrow we will figure out our next move." "Where will you sleep?" "Porch. I can hear better out there. See anyone approaching?" He must have seen the concern on her face because he added, "I have slept in worse places, Penelope. I will be fine." She wanted to argue, but exhaustion was catching up with her, the adrenaline of the day finally fading. "Oh, good night, Zane." "Good night." Penelope changed into her nightgown behind a hastily erected blanket, then crawled into the bed. It smelled of pine and wood smoke, and despite its rough construction, it was surprisingly comfortable. She expected to lie awake worrying, but the moment her head touched the pillow, sleep claimed her. She woke once in the deepest part of the night, disoriented until she remembered where she was. Through the window, she could see a shadowy figure on the porch, sitting with his back against the wall and his rifle across his knees. Watching, protecting. Something in her chest tightened at the sight, and she fell back asleep with an unexpected smile on her lips. Morning came with the smell of coffee and frying bacon. Penelope dressed quickly and emerged to find Zane cooking breakfast over the fire, looking as alert as if he had slept a full night in a proper bed. "How do you feel about riding?" he asked without preamble. "I can ride well enough. Why?" "Because walking to Superior will take too long and make us too vulnerable. If we go on horseback cutting through the mountains instead of following the roads, we can be there in a day and a half, maybe less if we push it." "You think those men are still looking for me?" "I know they are. Question is whether they are watching the roads or just waiting in Superior for you to show up." He slid bacon and beans onto a plate and handed it to her. Either way, unexpected approaches are better. They ate quickly, and Zane began preparing for the journey with practiced efficiency. He packed supplies into saddlebags, checked his weapons, and selected a gentler horse for Penelope. She watched him work, noting the way he seemed to think 3 steps ahead, anticipating needs before they arose. "You have done this before," she observed. "Helped people, I mean." "Once or twice." He cinched the saddle tight, then moved to prepare his own mount, a large bay that seemed suited to his size. "Nothing quite like this, though." "What makes this different?" He glanced at her, and there was something in his expression she could not quite read. "This time I care more about the outcome." Before she could process that statement, he was handing her the reins and mounting his own horse. "Stay close, follow my lead, and if I tell you to do something, do it immediately without question. Agreed?" "Agreed." They set out as the sun climbed above the eastern peaks, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Zane led them through terrain Penelope would never have attempted alone, following game trails and creek beds, always choosing routes with cover. He rode with constant vigilance, his eyes sweeping the landscape, his body attuned to every sound and movement. For her part, Penelope tried to focus on her riding rather than the circumstances that had brought her here. The morning was beautiful, The air crisp and clean, scented with pine and sage. Birds called from the trees, and once she saw a small herd of deer watching them from a distance before bounding away. "Tell me about Boston," Zane said after they had been riding for over an hour, surprising her with the personal question. "What would you like to know? What did you do there, before your father brought you west?" "Normal things, I suppose. I attended school, helped my mother with the household, took piano lessons that I was terrible at." The memories felt distant, like they belonged to a different person entirely. "We lived in a modest house near the common. My father worked as a clerk in a shipping company, always dreaming of something more. When my mother died of fever, something in him changed. He said life was too short to spend it behind a desk, counting other people's money. So he brought you to the frontier." "He did. I was terrified at first. Arizona seemed like another world, all heat and dust and danger, but I grew to love it, the openness, the possibility. I started teaching at a small school in Tucson and found I was good at it, that I enjoyed it." She smiled at the memory. "The children were wonderful, so eager to learn despite having so little. You miss it?" "I do. I miss the routine, the sense of purpose. After my father died, I could not seem to find my footing again. Everything felt uncertain." Zane was quiet for a moment, then said, "Uncertainty is just another kind of possibility." "Is that what brought you to these mountains?" "Possibility? That brought me west. The mountains brought peace." He pulled his horse to a stop, raising a hand for silence. They waited, barely breathing, while he listened to something she could not hear. After a long moment, he relaxed. "Just an elk moving through the brush below us. Come on, there's a good place to rest and water the horses about a mile ahead." The place he led them to was a small clearing beside a spring, shaded by tall ponderosa pines. They dismounted and let the horses drink while they stretched their legs and ate some dried meat and bread from Zane's supplies. "How did you learn to move through the wilderness like this?" Penelope asked, settling on a fallen log. "Trial and error, mostly. A Pima man I met when I first came to Arizona taught me some. The rest I figured out by watching and listening." He crouched beside the spring, refilling his canteen. "The land will tell you everything you need to know if you pay attention." "What is it telling you now?" He tilted his head, considering. "That we are alone, that the weather will hold fair, that we are making good time." His eyes found hers. "And that you are tougher than you look." "I had a good teacher. My father may have been a dreamer, but he was also practical. He made sure I could take care of myself out here. He did well." They rested for 20 minutes, then mounted up and continued. The sun climbed higher, and the temperature rose, though it was cooler here in the mountains than it had been on the desert floor. Zane set a steady pace, not too fast but always moving forward, and Penelope found herself falling into the rhythm of it, the creak of leather, the breathing of the horses, the endless landscape rolling by. As afternoon approached, Zane suddenly tensed. He pulled his horse to an immediate stop, his hand moving to his rifle. "Riders," he said quietly. "Below us, on the trail we just crossed." Penelope looked but saw nothing. "Are you certain?" "3 of them, moving fast." He guided his horse behind a thick stand of juniper, motioning for her to follow. "Could be anyone, but we are not taking chances." They waited in tense silence, hidden among the trees. Minutes crawled by, and then Penelope heard it too, the sound of horses pushing hard. Through gaps in the foliage, she caught glimpses of 3 riders, their forms blurring with speed and distance, but something about them was familiar. "Is it them?" she whispered. "Hard to say for certain, but they are heading in the direction we came from." His jaw was tight, eyes narrowed. "They are looking for our trail. Will they find the cabin?" "Not easily, and even if they do, they will find it empty." But there was concern in his voice. "We need to keep moving, put more distance between us and them." They waited until the riders had passed completely out of sight and hearing, then emerged from hiding and continued their journey. But the mood had shifted, the peaceful morning giving way to tension and awareness of danger. Zane pushed them harder now, taking more direct routes even when they were more exposed. "Zane," Penelope said after another hour of hard riding, "if this mine is so valuable, why not just let them have it? I could disappear, start over somewhere else." He pulled up and turned to face her fully, and there was steel in his expression. "Because it is yours. Because your father died for it, even if it was not an accident. Because giving in to men like that only encourages them to take more." He gentled his tone. "And because you deserve better than running. I hardly know you, yet you are risking everything for me. Why? I told you. I'm not the kind of man who can watch someone in trouble and walk away. That is not the whole truth." His eyes locked with hers, and the intensity there stole her breath. "No," he admitted. "It is not." The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken things, and Penelope felt her heart racing for reasons that had nothing to do with fear or exertion. But then Zane broke the gaze, turning back to the trail. "We need to keep moving. We will make camp at sunset, but I want to cover more ground first." They rode until the sun began its descent, painting the sky in brilliant purples and reds. Zane chose a campsite in a narrow canyon with high walls that would shield their fire and provide good defensive positions. He worked quickly to set up a minimal camp, while Penelope tended the horses, both of them moving with unspoken coordination. "No fire tonight," Zane decided. "We have cold food and the smoke is too risky." "You think they are that close?" "I think we do not take unnecessary chances." He spread out his bedroll and blankets, creating 2 sleeping areas near each other, but respectfully separated. "Get some rest. I will take first watch." "Let me take a turn. You cannot stay awake forever." He looked like he might argue, then nodded slowly. "All right. You sleep until the moon is directly overhead, then wake me. But if you hear anything at all, you wake me immediately. Do not investigate on your own." "I promise." Penelope lay down, fully clothed except for her boots, and pulled a blanket over herself. The ground was hard, and without the fire, the night grew cold quickly at this elevation. She heard Zane moving around their camp, checking perimeters, and eventually settling with his back against a rock where he could watch both approaches to their canyon. She must have dozed because she woke suddenly to find the moon high overhead and Zane still sitting in the same position, his rifle across his knees. She rose quietly and moved to his side. "You were supposed to wake me," she said softly. "You needed the sleep more. That was not our agreement." He turned his head to look at her, and in the moonlight, his features seemed carved from shadow and silver. "Go back to sleep, Penelope. Not until you do." She sat down beside him, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his large frame. "You are exhausted. I can see it in your eyes. I've gone longer without sleep. That does not mean you should." She reached out and touched his arm, feeling the hard muscle beneath his shirt. "Please, Zane, let me watch for a few hours." He was quiet for so long she thought he would refuse. Then he sighed, a sound of such weariness that her heart ached. "Wake me if anything changes. Anything." "I will." He stretched out on his bedroll, and Penelope was shocked at how quickly he fell asleep, as though his body had been waiting for permission. She kept watch as promised, listening to the night sounds, the distant cry of an owl, the rustle of wind through the canyon, the steady breathing of the man beside her. She found herself studying him in the moonlight, this stranger who had become her protector. His face was softer in sleep, the hard edges relaxing, and she could see hints of the man he might have been before whatever had driven him into these mountains. He was handsome in a rough, untamed way, and when she imagined him without the stubble, dressed in civilized clothes, he would still be striking. But it was not his appearance that drew her. It was his competence, his unwavering commitment to keeping her safe, the glimpses of kindness beneath his gruff exterior. In just over a day, he had made her feel more protected and understood than anyone had in months. The moon traced its arc across the sky, and eventually Penelope saw the first hints of dawn touching the eastern horizon. She had made it through the night without incident, and she felt a small surge of pride at that. Zane woke the moment the light changed, his eyes opening and immediately alert. "Anything?" he asked, sitting up. "All quiet." He nodded, rising fluidly despite having only slept a few hours. "We should move. If we push hard today, we can reach Superior by evening." They broke camp quickly, eating a spare breakfast of hardtack and dried fruit, then mounting up as the sun climbed. The landscape changed as they descended from the higher elevations, becoming more arid, more rugged. Zane navigated with the confidence of someone who had studied every inch of this territory, always choosing routes that kept them concealed. Around midday, they paused at a small creek to water the horses and rest briefly. Penelope splashed water on her face, grateful for the coolness, and when she turned, she found Zane watching her with an expression that made her stomach flip. "What?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Nothing. Just thinking." "About?" "About how you have not complained once, about how you have trusted me completely, about how most women I have known would be demanding to know every detail, questioning every decision. Would you prefer I did that?" "No." He moved closer, and Penelope's breath caught. "I prefer exactly what you are doing." The air between them seemed to thicken, and Penelope found herself swaying toward him before catching herself. This was not the time or place, no matter what her heart was trying to tell her. They had known each other barely 2 days, and they were running for their lives. But when Zane reached out and gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers brushing her cheek, she did not pull away. "Penelope," he said, her name almost a question. "Yes?" Whatever he had been about to say was interrupted by the distant crack of gunfire. Both of them froze. Then Zane was moving, pulling her behind cover and scanning the landscape with sharp eyes. "Where did that come from?" Penelope whispered. "South, maybe 2 miles." He listened intently. More shots rang out, a rapid exchange. "That is not hunting. That is a fight. Should we help? We should stay hidden and let it pass." But even as he said it, there was conflict in his expression. "Unless it is someone who needs help." More gunfire, then a sound that made Zane curse. A woman's scream, high and terrified. "Stay here," he commanded, already mounting his horse. "Absolutely not." Penelope was right behind him. "If someone is hurt, they will need help, and you might need an extra pair of hands." There was no time to argue. Zane spurred his horse forward, and Penelope followed, both of them racing toward the sound of trouble. They crested a low ridge and saw the scene below. An overturned wagon, a woman crouched behind it, and 3 men on horses circling like vultures. One of the men was firing at the woman, who was returning fire with a pistol, though her shots were clearly panicked and unpracticed. "Same 3 from before?" Penelope asked. "No, different horses, different saddles." Zane's jaw was set. But the same kind of trouble. He pulled his rifle free and fired a single shot that kicked up dust directly in front of the lead rider's horse, causing it to rear. The 3 men immediately turned toward this new threat, and Penelope saw their faces clearly for the first time. They were hard men, weathered and mean-looking, with the kind of eyes that had seen violence and enjoyed it. "Right away," Zane called out, his voice carrying clearly. "This does not concern you." "The hell it does not," one of them shouted back. "That wagon is ours and everything in it. The lady hiding behind it suggests otherwise." The 3 men exchanged glances, clearly sizing up this new situation. They saw 1 man and 1 woman, but they also saw the way Zane held his rifle, the absolute steadiness of his aim, and whatever they saw gave them pause. "You want to die for a stranger?" another man called. "I want to see justice done, but I'm willing to settle this with blood if you prefer." It was a bluff, Penelope realized. 3 against 1 was terrible odds, even for someone as capable as Zane. But he sat his horse with such confidence, such complete lack of fear, that the men hesitated. "We will remember this," the lead rider finally said, turning his horse. "And we will remember you." "I am counting on it," Zane replied calmly. The 3 men rode away, throwing dark looks over their shoulders, but they rode. Zane kept his rifle trained on them until they disappeared from sight, then finally lowered it and turned to the woman behind the wagon. "Are you hurt?" he called. She emerged slowly, still holding her pistol but pointing it at the ground. She was young, maybe 30, with brown hair coming loose from its pins and a tear in her dress. "No, just scared. Thank you, whoever you are." They rode down to her, and Zane dismounted to help right the wagon. 1 wheel was damaged but not broken, and the supplies that had spilled out seemed mostly intact. "What happened?" "I was traveling from Phoenix to meet my husband in Superior. Those men stopped me, said they wanted to check my wagon. When I refused, they tried to take it by force." She looked at them both with shaken gratitude. "If you had not come along, I do not know what would have happened." "Can you ride?" Zane asked, already assessing her situation. Yes, I have a horse. She ran off when the wagon overturned, but I saw where she went. It took another hour to locate the woman's horse, repair the wagon wheel enough for travel, and get her back on the road. She introduced herself as Martha Pemberton, and she proved to be made of sterner stuff than her initial fear had suggested. By the time they had her sorted, she was thanking them profusely and insisting she would be fine to complete her journey alone. "Superior is only 8 miles further on this road," she said. "I will make it before dark. But please, let me do something to repay you. My husband owns the general store in town. Come by and I will make sure you get whatever supplies you need." "That is generous," Penelope said. "Thank you." After Martha had gone, Penelope turned to Zane. "That was incredibly dangerous." "Yes." "We could have been killed." "Yes." "So why did you do it?" He met her eyes steadily. "Because I am not the kind of man who can watch someone in trouble and walk away." Despite the seriousness of the situation, Penelope felt a smile tugging at her lips. "You said that before." "Still true." He checked the position of the sun. "We lost time. We will need to ride hard to reach Superior before full dark." They pushed the horses as much as they dared, covering ground rapidly. The landscape continued to change, becoming more settled, more familiar. They passed mining operations and small ranches, saw more evidence of human activity. As the sun began to set, the town of Superior came into view, tucked into a valley and surrounded by mountains. "We need to be smart about this," Zane said, pulling them to a stop at the edge of town. "If those men from the Stagecoach have friends here, they might be watching for you." "What do you suggest?" "We find somewhere safe for you to stay tonight. Tomorrow we go to the territorial office together, file your papers, and get them properly recorded. Once that is done, they cannot take the claim from you, no matter what they do." "What about selling it?" "One problem at a time." He guided them down a side street, avoiding the main thoroughfare. "I know a boarding house run by a woman named Claire Sutton. She is discreet and she owes me a favor." The boarding house was a neat 2-story building with a fresh coat of white paint and flower boxes in the windows. Zane knocked on the back door, and a moment later it opened to reveal a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a kind face. "Zane Erikson," she said, surprise evident in her voice. "I have not seen you in town for 6 months at least." "Hello, Claire. I need your help." She took in the sight of them both, travel-worn and dusty, and her expression turned serious. "Come inside." They followed her into a cozy kitchen that smelled of bread and coffee. Claire closed the door firmly behind them and turned to face them with her arms crossed. "What kind of trouble are you in?" "The kind that involves men with guns and a valuable mining claim," Zane said bluntly. "This is Penelope Dawson. She needs a safe place to stay tonight, somewhere no one will think to look for her." Claire studied Penelope with the assessing gaze of someone who had seen much in life and was not easily fooled. Whatever she saw must have satisfied her because she nodded. "I have a room on the 2nd floor, back corner. No one will see you come or go if you use the rear stairs." She poured them both coffee without asking, a gesture of comfort and hospitality. "Are you expecting these men to come looking tonight?" "I'm expecting them to be looking constantly," Zane said, "which is why I will be staying as well if you have space." "I always have space for you." Claire's tone softened slightly. "But you need to tell me what I am getting into here." Zane laid out the situation in concise terms, and Claire listened without interruption. When he finished, she turned to Penelope. "Your father was Samuel Dawson?" "Yes. Did you know him?" "Only in passing. He came to town once a month for supplies, always paid in silver, always kept to himself. Quiet man, polite." She paused. "I heard he died. I'm sorry." "Thank you." "And now someone is trying to steal what he left you." Claire's expression hardened. "I do not hold with claim jumpers and thieves. You are welcome to stay as long as you need." Relief flooded through Penelope. "I cannot thank you enough." "Do not thank me yet. If rough men come knocking on my door asking questions, things might get complicated." But Claire was already moving, pulling food from her pantry. "Both of you look half-starved. Sit down and eat while I prepare your rooms." The meal was simple but delicious, fresh bread and stew and strong coffee. Penelope realized she had not eaten a proper meal since leaving Tucson, and her body was grateful for the sustenance. Zane ate with methodical efficiency, his eyes distant, clearly thinking through their next steps. "The territorial office opens at 8 in the morning. Claire said when they had finished. Judge Morrison handles all the mining claims. He is honest, thank God. So once your papers are filed, they will be legitimate. What about security? Zane asked. Anyone watching the office? Not that I have seen, but I have not been looking. I can ask around discreetly if you like. I would appreciate that. Claire showed them to their rooms, which were indeed at the back of the house, side by side with a connecting door between them. Leave that door unlocked, she told Zane quietly. If there is trouble, you need to be able to reach her quickly. Thank you, Claire. After the older woman had gone, Zane turned to Penelope. Try to get some real rest tonight. Tomorrow might be difficult. What about you? I will rest, but I will also be listening. He hesitated, then added, if you need anything at all, I am right here. I know. Penelope felt the weight of those words, the promise behind them. Zane, I do not know how I will ever repay you for everything you have done. You do not owe me anything. Yes, I do. You saved my life, probably more than once. You have sacrificed your peace and solitude for me. That is not nothing. He stepped closer, and Penelope's heart began to race. He was so large, so solid, and the urge to lean into him, to feel his strength surrounding her, was almost overwhelming. Penelope, he said quietly, helping you has not been a sacrifice. It has been a privilege. Before she could respond, before she could process the depth of emotion in those simple words, he stepped back and moved toward his room. Good night. Lock your door. Good night, Zane. Penelope did as instructed, locking the door to the hallway, but leaving the connecting door to Zane's room unlocked as Claire had suggested. She changed into her nightgown, grateful to be out of her dusty traveling clothes, and climbed into the soft bed. It was a luxury after sleeping on the ground, and her body sank into it with relief. But despite her exhaustion, sleep did not come easily. Her mind kept replaying the last few days, the terror of the chase, the unexpected safety of Zane's cabin, the long ride through beautiful, dangerous country. And always, always, the presence of the man in the next room, the mountain man who had turned her world upside down. She had known him for less than 3 days, yet something had shifted inside her, something fundamental and undeniable. She trusted him completely, felt safe with him in a way she had never felt with anyone else. But more than that, she found herself drawn to him, fascinated by the glimpses of the man beneath the gruff exterior, the way he had helped Martha without hesitation, despite the danger, the care he took with the horses, the competence in everything he did, the rare softness in his eyes when he looked at her when he thought she was not paying attention. A sound from the next room made her freeze. Footsteps, slow and measured, pacing. Zane could not sleep either, it seemed. Penelope rose and moved quietly to the connecting door, pressing her ear against it. She could hear him moving, the creak of floorboards, then stillness. She should go back to bed. It was improper to even think about opening that door, about seeking him out in the night. But propriety seemed less important when someone was trying to kill you, when the only person standing between you and danger was the man in the next room. Penelope opened the door slowly. Zane was standing by the window, shirtless, his back to her. Even in the dim moonlight filtering through the curtains, she could see the powerful muscles of his shoulders and back, the scars that marked his skin, evidence of a hard life and harder experiences. "Cannot sleep either?" he asked without turning around. No, she stayed in the doorway, maintaining the boundary even as she crossed it. Too much has happened. It will be over soon, one way or another. He turned to face her, and Penelope had to force herself to keep her eyes on his face, not let them drop to his bare chest. "Tomorrow we file the papers, make it official. Then we figure out how to keep you safe while you arrange the sale. You keep saying we. Yes? I cannot expect you to stay with me through all of this. You have your own life, your cabin in the mountains." He crossed the room in 3 long strides, and suddenly he was right in front of her, close enough that she could feel the heat of his body, could see the intensity burning in those gray eyes. "Penelope," he said, and his voice was rough with emotion. "I know this is fast. I know we barely know each other. But something happened when I saw you in that stagecoach, something I cannot explain and do not fully understand. And every moment since then has only made it stronger." Her breath caught. "Zane, I am not asking you for anything," he continued. "I am not expecting anything. But I need you to know that I am not helping you out of obligation or duty. I am helping you because I cannot imagine doing anything else, because the thought of anything happening to you makes me feel things I have not felt in years." Penelope reached up and placed her hand on his chest, feeling his heart pounding beneath her palm. "I feel it too," she admitted, "this pull toward you, this sense that somehow, despite everything, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." His hand covered hers, his calloused palm warm and gentle. "I do not deserve this, do not deserve you. That is not your choice to make." They stood there in the doorway, the air thick with unspoken possibilities, and Penelope knew that whatever happened tomorrow, whatever came next, her life had been irrevocably changed, not just by the danger or the inheritance, but by this man who had appeared in her life like an answer to a question she had not known she was asking. "We should both try to sleep," Zane finally said, though he made no move to step back. "Tomorrow will require clear heads." "You are right," but Penelope did not move either. "Thank you, Zane, for everything, but especially for being honest with me just now. I'm not good at games or pretense. If I feel something, you will know it." "Good." She let her hand drop slowly from his chest, already missing the contact. "Good night. Good night, Penelope." She closed the door between them, but did not lock it, and somehow that small act felt significant. She returned to bed, and this time sleep came more easily, as though speaking those truths aloud had settled something inside her. Morning arrived with sunlight streaming through the window and the sound of the town coming to life below. Penelope dressed carefully in her best remaining dress, wanting to look respectable and credible when they went to the territorial office. When she emerged from her room, she found Zane already up and dressed, looking slightly more civilized, with his hair tied back and a clean shirt on, though he was no less imposing. Claire had breakfast waiting, and they ate quickly while she shared what she had learned from her discreet inquiries the night before. "There are men in town asking about a woman traveling alone with valuable documents," she reported grimly. "They have been to the sheriff, claiming she stole from them, but the sheriff did not believe them. Still, they are watching the main streets." "Then we avoid the main streets," Zane said calmly. "Is there a back way to reach the territorial office?" "Through the alley behind the bank. Yes, I can show you." "That would help." They left through the back door, Claire leading them through a series of narrow alleys and side streets that kept them out of sight of the main thoroughfare. Penelope carried her documents in a leather case that Zane had procured from somewhere, and she kept one hand on it at all times. The territorial office was in a stone building that also housed the courthouse, solid and imposing. Claire bid them good luck and hurried away, not wanting to be seen with them. Zane opened the door for Penelope, and they stepped inside. The interior was cool and dim, with high ceilings and the musty smell of old paper and ink. A clerk sat behind a tall desk, and he looked up as they entered. "May I help you?" "I need to file a mining claim transfer," Penelope said, moving forward with more confidence than she felt. "My name is Penelope Dawson, and I am the sole heir to Samuel Dawson's claim." The clerk's eyebrows rose slightly. "The Dawson claim? That is a significant property. Do you have the proper documentation?" "I do." She set the leather case on the desk and began removing the papers, spreading them out for his inspection. The clerk studied them carefully, occasionally making notes. Zane stood behind Penelope, not hovering but present, a solid wall of protection at her back. She could feel the tension radiating from him, his awareness of every person who entered the building, every sound from the street outside. "These appear to be in order," the clerk finally said, "but I will need to have Judge Morrison verify them before I can accept the filing. Can you wait?" "How long?" "He should be in within the hour." Penelope glanced at Zane, who gave a slight nod. "We will wait." The hours stretched into 2, then 3. Other people came and went, handling various legal matters, and Penelope tried not to fidget or show her nervousness. Zane remained calm, though she noticed his hand never strayed far from the pistol at his hip. Finally, a man in his 60s with silver hair and a dignified bearing entered through a side door. The clerk immediately stood. "Judge Morrison, I have documents here that require your review." The judge approached, studied the papers with the same thoroughness the clerk had shown, then looked at Penelope. "You are Samuel Dawson's daughter?" "Yes, sir." "I am sorry for your loss. Your father was a good man, honest in his dealings. He turned to the clerk. "These are legitimate. File them immediately." Relief flooded through Penelope so strongly that her knees went weak. Zane's hand was suddenly at her elbow, steadying her, and she gave him a grateful look. The clerk worked quickly, recording the transfer in the official ledger, stamping and signing multiple copies. "Your claim is now officially recorded, Miss Dawson. These are your copies. Keep them safe." "I will. Thank you." They had just turned to leave when the door burst open and 3 men strode in, the same 3 who had chased the stagecoach. They froze when they saw Penelope and Zane, then the lead man's face twisted into a snarl. "That is her! That is the woman who stole those documents!" Judge Morrison's expression turned cold. "Is that so? Because I just reviewed those documents, and they are completely legitimate, sealed and signed by Samuel Dawson himself with proper witnesses. She forged them. Did she forge the assay reports as well? The ones with the territorial seal that predates her father's death by 6 months?" The judge moved to stand beside Penelope, an unexpected ally. "I do not know what your game is, gentlemen, but this woman has every legal right to that claim. Now, leave my office before I have the sheriff arrest you for harassment." The 3 men looked at each other, clearly not having expected this resistance. Then the leader's hand moved toward his gun, and everything happened very fast. Zane moved like lightning, putting himself between the men and Penelope, his own weapon drawn before any of them could clear leather. "Do not," he said, and his voice was ice. "You will lose." For a long moment the room was frozen in tableau. Then the sheriff appeared in the doorway, drawn by the commotion, his own weapon in hand. "What's going on here?" "These men just threatened a woman in my office," Judge Morrison said firmly. "I want them removed." The sheriff, a burly man with intelligent eyes, assessed the situation quickly. "You 3, outside, now." "This is not over," the lead man hissed at Penelope as they were herded toward the door. "Yes," Zane said quietly. "It is." After they had gone, the sheriff returned. "Would you folks like to make an official complaint?" "What good would it do?" Penelope asked wearily. "Not much, if I'm honest. Without proof they did anything more than make threats, I cannot hold them." He looked apologetic. "But I can make sure they know I'm watching them, encourage them to leave town." "That would be appreciated," Zane said. Outside the office, Penelope finally allowed herself to breathe. "It is done. The claim is officially mine." "It is." Zane scanned the street, ever vigilant. "Now we need to get you somewhere safe while you arrange to sell it." "Who would I even sell it to?" "There are mining companies always looking for proven claims. But that will take time, negotiations. In the meantime, you are vulnerable." They made their way back to the boarding house through the same network of alleys, and Claire met them at the door with anxious eyes. "I heard there was trouble at the territorial office." "Nothing we could not handle," Zane assured her, "but those men are getting desperate." "Then she should stay here, out of sight, until this is resolved." "I agree. But I need to make some inquiries, find potential buyers for the claim. I cannot do that while guarding her." Claire straightened. "I have a shotgun, and I know how to use it. She will be safe with me." Zane looked at Penelope, clearly torn between his protective instincts and practical necessity. "I will not be gone long, a few hours at most." "I will be fine," Penelope said, though part of her wanted to beg him not to go. "Do what you need to do." He nodded, then did something unexpected. He cupped her face in his large hands, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones, and looked into her eyes with such intensity that her breath caught. "Stay inside. Trust no one but Claire. And if anything at all feels wrong, you lock yourself in your room and you fire a shot through the window, I will hear it and come running." "I promise." He held her gaze a moment longer, then released her and left through the back door. Penelope watched him go, feeling his absence like a physical thing. "That man is in love with you," Claire said matter-of-factly. Penelope turned to her, startled. "We have only known each other a few days." "Some things do not require time. They just are," Claire smiled. "And unless I am badly mistaken, you are in love with him too." Was she? Penelope examined her feelings carefully. The thought of Zane not being in her life, of never seeing him again once this was over, caused a sharp pain in her chest. The memory of his hands on her face, the intensity in his eyes, made her heart race. The sense of rightness she felt in his presence, the way she trusted him completely, despite barely knowing him. "Yes," she admitted softly. "I think I am." "Then you had better figure out what you are going to do about that," Claire said practically. "Because a man like Zane Erikson does not give his heart easily, and if you do not want it, you need to let him know before this goes any further." "But I do want it. I want him. Even though it would mean a very different life than you planned, he is a mountain man, Penelope. He lives alone in the wilderness. If you choose him, that is the life you are choosing." Penelope thought about her little room in Tucson, her teaching position, the modest, respectable life she had built. Then she thought about the last few days, the adventure and danger and breathless excitement, the way she had felt truly alive in Zane's presence, more herself than she had been in years. "I think," she said slowly, "that I have been living half a life, waiting for something I could not name. And then Zane appeared, and suddenly everything made sense. Then you have your answer." The hours while Zane was gone crawled by. Penelope tried to read, tried to rest, but mostly she paced and worried. Claire brought her lunch and dinner, kept her company, but nothing could ease the anxiety of waiting. Finally, as the sun was setting, she heard the back door open and Zane's distinctive heavy tread. She nearly ran to meet him, restraining herself at the last moment to something approaching dignified haste. He looked tired, but satisfied. "I found a buyer. The Montana Mining Company has an office here in Superior, and their manager is very interested in your claim. He has agreed to an assay and evaluation with the intent to make an offer." "How long will that take?" He said 3 days, maybe 4. They need to inspect the mine, verify the silver content, assess the extraction feasibility. "And in the meantime?" "In the meantime, you stay hidden. Those 3 men are still in town, and they are not giving up. The sheriff found them at the saloon, making threats, but without hard evidence he cannot arrest them." Claire cleared her throat. "I have an idea about that. My cousin owns a ranch about 10 miles north of here. It is isolated, defensible, and no one would think to look for you there. You could wait out the evaluation period in safety." Zane considered this. "Is your cousin trustworthy?" "Absolutely. He is former cavalry, knows how to handle trouble, and he owes me more favors than I can count." "Then that might be our best option." He looked at Penelope. "What do you think?" "I think I am tired of hiding and waiting, but I also think I would prefer to be alive to collect payment for the mine." She managed a weak smile. "Your idea sounds good, Claire." They left before dawn the next morning while the town was still sleeping. Claire had sent word to her cousin, and Zane had procured supplies for several days. The ride north was tense, both of them constantly watching for signs of pursuit, but they reached the ranch without incident. Claire's cousin, a man named Thomas Barrett, met them with a rifle and a wary expression that relaxed when Zane explained the situation. "Any friend of Claire's is welcome here. Come on inside." The ranch was indeed isolated, tucked into a narrow valley with good views of all approaches. Thomas had built a sturdy house with thick walls, and Penelope could see defensive features incorporated into the design. This was the home of a man who had seen battle and prepared accordingly. "You can stay as long as you need," Thomas said, showing them to a guest room. "I have ranch hands who patrol regularly, and anyone approaching will be seen long before they arrive." "Thank you," Penelope said gratefully. "I know this is an imposition." "Nonsense. Gets lonely out here. Nice to have company, and a good excuse to tell old war stories." Thomas grinned, and Penelope warmed to him immediately. The next few days settled into a strange routine. Penelope spent her time reading, helping with small tasks around the ranch, and talking with Thomas, who proved to be an excellent storyteller. Zane divided his time between patrolling with the ranch hands and spending quiet hours with her. It was during these quiet hours that they truly got to know each other. Zane spoke of his childhood in Minnesota, of losing his family to illness, of the war and the things he had seen that had driven him to seek solitude. Penelope shared her own stories, her memories of Boston and her mother, her father's dreams and his determination to provide for her. "Do you regret coming west?" Zane asked one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "Not anymore. I did at first when everything was strange and hard. But now I cannot imagine having lived my whole life in Boston, never seeing these mountains, these skies, She looked at him. Never meeting you. Penelope. Her name was a caress the way he said it. When this is over, when the mine is sold and you have your money, what will you do? I do not know. I thought I wanted to return to teaching, maybe open my own school, build a safe, predictable life. And now? She turned to face him fully. Now I find that safe and predictable sounds terribly boring. His gray eyes searched hers. What are you saying? I'm saying that I have spent 3 days imagining what my life will be like once this is over, once you go back to your mountain and I go back to whatever comes next. And, Zane, I cannot stand the thought of it. He went very still. You do not know what you are saying. You do not know what that life would be like. Then tell me. Explain it to me. It is hard, isolated. The cabin is comfortable but small. The nearest town is Superior, and I only go there every few months. The winters are harsh. The summers can be brutal. There are no social events, no cultural opportunities, none of the things you are accustomed to. And what are the benefits? That stopped him. What? You have told me the drawbacks, now tell me the benefits. Why do you live that way? He was quiet for a long moment, gathering his thoughts. Peace. The kind of deep peace that only comes from being utterly alone in nature. Freedom to live exactly as I want, answer to no one, follow my own schedule. Beauty everywhere I look, constantly changing with the seasons. The satisfaction of living by my own skill and effort. And lately, he added quietly, the knowledge that if the right person were there, it would not feel isolated at all. It would feel like home. Penelope's heart squeezed. I think I would like to see this cabin of yours, really see it, not just in passing while running for my life. You're serious. Completely. I'm not saying I have all the answers, Zane. I'm not saying I know exactly what I want my future to look like. But I know I want you in it. I know that being with you feels more right than anything else in my life ever has. He reached out and took her hand, his large fingers wrapping around hers. I am not an easy man, Penelope. I have been alone for a long time. I have habits and ways that might drive you crazy. And I have seen things, done things in the war that still haunt me sometimes. I am not expecting perfect. I'm expecting real. She squeezed his hand. And I promise I will not pretend to be something I am not either. I can be stubborn and independent, and I ask too many questions. I like your questions, and I like your answers. So what do we do about this? Zane pulled her closer until she was tucked against his side, his arm around her shoulders. We take it one day at a time. We wait for the mine evaluation. We get you safely through this situation. And then, if you still feel the same way, we figure out what comes next. Together. Together, Penelope agreed, resting her head against his shoulder and feeling more at home than she had in months. On the 4th day, a rider arrived from town with news. The mining company had completed their evaluation and wanted to make an offer. The amount quoted made Penelope's eyes widen. It was more than she had ever imagined, enough to live comfortably for the rest of her life, enough to do anything she wanted. We need to go back to Superior to finalize the sale, Zane said after the messenger had left. But those 3 men are still in town, and they are getting desperate. The sheriff has warned them to leave multiple times, but they are not going. Then what do we do? Thomas spoke up. You go in with enough force that they would be fools to try anything. I will come with you, and I will bring my 3 best hands. 7 of us, all armed, all watching. They would have to be suicidal to attack. It was a good plan, and the next morning they rode out in a group. The journey back to Superior felt shorter than the trip out, perhaps because Penelope was no longer running but moving toward resolution. They went directly to the territorial office, where the mining company representative was waiting with documents and a bank draft. The sale was completed with businesslike efficiency. Penelope signed papers, received her payment, and suddenly she was wealthy beyond her modest dreams. The mining company representative shook her hand. Your father had an exceptional eye for mineral deposits, Miss Dawson. This claim will produce for years. You made a wise decision selling when you did. After he left, Judge Morrison appeared. I wanted to congratulate you, Miss Dawson, and to tell you that those 3 men who have been causing trouble left town this morning. Apparently, the sheriff convinced them that their continued presence would result in arrest for vagrancy and harassment. Thank you, Judge Morrison, for everything. I am simply doing my job. Your father was a good man, and you deserve to benefit from his hard work. He nodded to Zane. You picked a good protector, Miss Dawson. Mr. Erikson has an excellent reputation in these parts. After leaving the territorial office, they returned to Claire's boarding house, where a small celebration had been arranged. Claire, Thomas, and the ranch hands who had helped guard them were all there, and the evening was filled with good food, laughter, and stories. But as the celebration wound down and the others drifted away, Penelope found herself alone with Zane on the back porch, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. It is really over, she said softly. I am safe, the mine is sold, and I have more money than I know what to do with. What will you do with it? I have been thinking about that. I could return to teaching, but maybe open a real school, one that serves children who could not otherwise afford education. I could travel, see more of the country. I could do anything I want. What do you want? She turned to him, this man who had become everything to her in the span of a week. I want to see your cabin again, properly this time. I want to spend time there, really understand what that life would be like. And then I want to decide, with full knowledge, whether it is the life for me. And if it is not, then we figure something else out. Maybe you visit me in whatever town I settle in. Maybe we find a middle ground, a place where we can both be happy. But Zane, I'm not walking away from this, from you, without at least trying. He pulled her into his arms, and she went willingly, pressing her face against his chest and breathing in his scent of leather and pine and something uniquely him. His heart beat steady and strong beneath her ear. I never expected this, he said quietly. When I stopped that stagecoach, I was just trying to help. I did not know I was going to meet the woman who would turn my entire world upside down. Good upside down or bad? The best upside down. He tilted her face up and looked into her eyes. Penelope Dawson, I am in love with you. I have been since about the second day, when you kept up with me through rough country without complaint, when you trusted me completely, when you showed more courage than half the men I have known. I love you, and I want you in my life, whatever form that takes. Tears pricked her eyes, happy tears. I love you too, Zane Erikson. I love your strength and your kindness, your competence and your rare smiles. I love the way you make me feel safe and challenged and alive all at once. He kissed her then, a gentle brush of lips that deepened into something more, something that spoke of promises and passion and a future full of possibility. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Penelope was grinning. So when do we leave for the cabin? Tomorrow, if you want. We can take our time, make a proper trip of it. Let me show you everything, introduce you to that life properly. I want that. I want all of it. They left the next morning, bidding farewell to Claire and Thomas with promises to visit soon. The ride to Zane's cabin took 2 days, but this time they traveled leisurely, stopping to rest and talk, sharing meals and stories, and gradually learning all the small details that turned strangers into partners. The cabin was as she remembered, solid and welcoming, tucked into its hidden valley. But this time, Zane gave her a proper tour, showing her where he hunted, where the best fishing spots were, how he preserved food for winter, all the practical details of his life. Penelope spent the next week living that life with him. She learned to help with chores, to cook on the open fire, to appreciate the deep silence of the mountains. She woke to watch sunrises from the porch, spent afternoons reading while Zane worked on various projects, and evenings talking by firelight. And slowly, surely, she fell completely in love, not just with the man, but with the life. It was hard work, yes, and isolated, but it was also beautiful and peaceful and deeply satisfying. She found herself thriving in the simplicity, in the direct connection between effort and result, in the constant presence of nature. On the 7th evening, as they sat watching the stars from their usual spot on the porch, Penelope made her decision. I want to stay, she said simply. Not just visit. Stay. Make this my home too. Zane turned to her slowly. Are you certain? Once winter comes, we will be snowed in for months. You will not be able to change your mind easily. I am certain. I will sell my things in Tucson, resign from my teaching position, close that chapter of my life. This is where I belong, Zane, with you. He kissed her again, longer this time, and when they broke apart, there were tears in his eyes. I never thought I would have this. a partner, someone to share this life with. I had made peace with solitude. Well, now you are stuck with company. She paused, then added shyly. And I was thinking, maybe in the spring we could make it official. Get married properly in front of the judge and superior. Or we could get married sooner. He was already moving, rising and pulling her to her feet. Thomas's ranch is on the way. His wife could serve as witness. And he can ride to Superior to fetch the circuit preacher. We could be married within a week. Truly? Penelope, I have waited my whole life for you without knowing it. Now that I have found you, I do not want to wait any longer than necessary to call you my wife. They were married 10 days later in Thomas and Margaret Barrett's parlor with Claire and several ranch hands as witnesses. Penelope wore a simple dress she had purchased in Superior, and Zane wore his best clothes, his hair neatly trimmed for the occasion. The ceremony was short and sweet, and when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Zane kissed her so thoroughly that Claire laughed and had to remind them there were others present. The newlyweds returned to the mountain cabin, to their new life together. That winter, as Zane had warned, they were snowed in for months, but Penelope never felt trapped. She set up a small library in one corner of the cabin, using some of her mine money to have books shipped from Superior before the snows came. She taught herself to tan hides and make clothes, to preserve and prepare game, to manage the household side of their mountain life. And in the spring, when the snows melted and they could travel again, they made their first trip to Superior as husband and wife. Penelope used part of her money to donate books to the small school there, to fund scholarships for children who could not afford education. It was not the same as teaching, but it gave her the satisfaction of contributing, of helping others. Over the years, they found a rhythm, spending most of their time in the mountain cabin, but making regular trips to town for supplies and social contact. Penelope never regretted her choice, never longed for the life she had left behind. The cabin became a true home, expanded gradually to include a second room, a larger porch, small touches that made it uniquely theirs. And then, 2 years after their wedding, Penelope discovered she was pregnant. Zane was simultaneously terrified and overjoyed, fussing over her constantly until she laughingly told him to stop treating her like she was made of glass. They made arrangements to stay with Claire in Superior for the birth, not wanting to risk complications so far from help. Their son was born on a warm June morning, healthy and loud and perfect. They named him Samuel, after Penelope's father, and watching Zane hold their baby with such gentle care, such overwhelming love, Penelope felt her heart might burst with happiness. They returned to the mountain when Samuel was 3 months old, and the baby thrived in the clean air and peaceful surroundings. Zane proved to be a devoted father, patient and protective, teaching his son about the land and the animals with the same care he had once shown Penelope. 3 years later, they welcomed a daughter whom they named Clara after Claire Sutton, the woman who had provided shelter when they needed it most. And 2 years after that, another son, Thomas, named for the rancher who had kept them safe. The cabin grew again, expanded to accommodate their growing family. Penelope taught the children their letters and numbers, told them stories of Boston and the wild ride that had brought their parents together. Zane taught them to track and hunt, to respect the land and understand its rhythms. As the years passed, their legend grew in Superior. People spoke of the mountain man and his brave wife, of the adventure that had brought them together, of the life they had built in the wilderness. Young couples would sometimes ask their advice, and Zane and Penelope would share what they had learned about love and partnership and choosing the life you wanted rather than the life expected of you. Claire remained a close friend until her death at 83, and Penelope never forgot the kindness shown to her by that sharp-eyed woman who had taken in strangers without question. Thomas and Margaret became like family, their own children growing up alongside Samuel, Clara, and Thomas Jr. The mining claim that had brought Penelope to Arizona continued to produce for nearly 20 years, and the money it had generated funded schools and libraries throughout the territory. Penelope never regretted selling it, never wished she had held onto it for greater profit. The sale had given her freedom and security, and that was all she had ever needed. As they grew older, Zane's hair turned silver and his movements slowed slightly, but he remained strong and capable, still chopping wood and hunting game. Penelope's face gained lines from years of sun and laughter, but her eyes remained bright and curious, always learning, always engaged with the world around her. They celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary with all three children present: Samuel, now 23 and recently married himself; Clara, 20, and teaching in Superior's expanded school; Thomas, 17, and already standing as tall as his father. The family gathered at the mountain cabin, now a substantial compound with multiple buildings, and shared a feast in stories and laughter. "Tell us again how you met," Clara begged, as she always did. And so Penelope and Zane took turns recounting the story: the stagecoach chase, the desperate flight, the slow building of trust and love. The children had heard it countless times, but they never tired of it, finding romance and adventure in their parents' beginning. "The best decision I ever made," Zane said, pulling Penelope close, "was stopping that stagecoach, though at the time I just thought I was helping a stranger." "The best decision I ever made," Penelope added, "was trusting the mountain man who appeared out of nowhere and turned my world upside down." "Good upside down," Zane clarified with a smile, and the children laughed, recognizing the old joke. That night, after the children had settled in their old rooms and the cabin was quiet, Zane and Penelope sat on the porch as they had done for over 2 decades, watching the stars emerge. "Do you ever regret it?" Zane asked, though he must have known the answer. "This life, this isolation, all the hardships?" "Not for a single moment." Penelope rested her head on his shoulder, breathing in the mountain air. "This is exactly where I'm supposed to be, where I have always been supposed to be. I just did not know it until trouble followed my stagecoach, and you took another road to keep me safe. Best trouble I ever encountered. Best road I ever took." They sat in comfortable silence, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful and lasting. The mountains stood eternal around them, witness to their love story, guardian of their peace. And in the years that followed, even as age continued to mark them both, even as they eventually passed the cabin to Samuel and his growing family, even as they took their final breaths within days of each other, content and surrounded by those they loved, their story lived on. In Superior, in the expanded schools Penelope had funded, children learned about the brave teacher who had claimed her inheritance and the mountain man who had protected her. In the mountains, hunters and trappers would sometimes come across the old Erikson compound and marvel at what two people had built together through love and determination. The stagecoach that had been followed by trouble had long since rotted away. The three men who had chased it were forgotten, their names lost to time. But Zane and Penelope Erikson were remembered, their love story passed down through generations, proof that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places, and that true love, once found, can sustain you through anything. Their children carried on their legacy. Samuel running the mountain property and teaching his own children the ways Zane had taught him, Clara continuing her mother's passion for education, Thomas becoming a rancher like his namesake. And each of them found their own loves, their own adventures, building on the foundation their parents had established. The mine claim that had started it all was eventually exhausted, the silver pulled from the earth and scattered to 1,000 purposes. But the real treasure, the love between a mountain man and the woman he had saved, proved infinitely more valuable and far more lasting. And sometimes, on quiet nights when the wind moved through the mountains just right, people swore they could hear laughter echoing from the old cabin site, as though two souls who had found each other so perfectly in life had never really been separated by death at all, but continued their companionship in whatever lay beyond, still watching sunsets, still trading stories, still absolutely certain that they had found exactly what they were always meant to find: each other.